Hey, good morning. It's time for another episode of A Coffee with Mr. Larry. And it's Friday on March the 12th. So it's Friday. So we're going to do a lesson from what the Bible says about money. And since I've got on a tie and a suit jacket over there, I might even preach a little bit to you today, but I want to tell you a story, right? And I want to tell you a story that many of you may be familiar with, and it's the story about how Jesus fed the 5,000. Now, there's a lot of details and conversations about that I'm not going to go into with you today because I have a specific lesson I want to teach us because it's for us. And so let me read this to you, and the screen will pop up here with it here in just a minute. And this is out of John chapter 6, and it goes this way. When Jesus looked up and saw a great crowd coming toward him, he said to Philip, one of his guys, where should we buy bread for these people to eat? He had asked this only to test him, for he already had in mind what he was going to do. Philip answered him, it would take more than a half a year's wages to buy enough bread for each one of them to have a bite. Another of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. Here's a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish. How far will they go among so many? Jesus said, have the people sit down. There was plenty of grass in that place, and they all sat down. About 5,000 men were there, plus their families, right? But that's 5,000 men were there. Jesus then took the loaves, gave thanks, and distributed to those who were seated as much as they wanted. He did the same with the fish. When they all had enough to eat, he said to his disciples, gather the pieces that are left over, let nothing be wasted. So they gathered them up and filled 12 baskets with the pieces of the 5 barley loaves left over by those who had not eaten. So here's my lesson for you today. Jesus wanted his folks, his guys, his disciples to do something. He wanted to teach them a lesson, a practical lesson, while practically taking care of some people, right? So he went to Philip and said, Philip, how are we going to do this? And Philip said, I have no idea. We don't have enough money. We can't do that. We don't have the power to do that. We don't have the resources to do that. Have you ever heard that in a church meeting? Have you ever heard that in your personal life? Jesus, we don't have enough to do what you want us to do. And so he sent them out on a journey, and Simon came back and said, Andrew came back and said, hey, Jesus, the only thing we found in this group, they didn't pack a lunch. The only thing we found was one little boy's Happy Meal. He's got a couple of fish and a couple of little loaves of bread. We got that, but that's not going to do us any good. You see, they were focused on the scarcity, not the abundance, right? And Jesus did one of these miracles that he's really good about doing. He said, watch this. And he miraculously took those barley loaves and fish and multiplied them and handed them out to the crowd. Now, in some of the other Gospels, if you read it, he had them set in groups of 50, and then he had his guys go around and distribute it. And can't you see these 12 fellas with these baskets going, here, you can have a little bit, but don't get too much, but that's not what Jesus said. He said, give it to them until they're full. And 5,000 men plus their families reaching into these 12 baskets, getting enough lunch to feed themselves. And can you imagine what it's like for those disciples, Jesus's followers and believers, to watch this happen? Then at the end, when everybody had plenty of lunch, Jesus told these guys, okay, fellas, go back and collect what's left over. We don't want to throw anything away. And they came back, every one of them, with a basket full. Here's my lesson for us today. Jesus asked us to do things that oftentimes we might not think we have the resources to do. But he's not asking us to do them completely in our power, right? So here's the lesson for us today. And this is probably running way long. This one doesn't have a meter on it, so I can't tell. But here's the lesson, important lesson for us today. Who made the miracle happen? Jesus. Jesus is in the manufacturing business. You right? Get it? He created it. The disciples were in the distribution business. Their job was to distribute what God made, what Jesus made. Do you understand that's our job? If you're a believer, that's our job. It is that we live in God's economy and he puts resources into our hands so that we can distribute them to others in need. Now, I'm going to continue this next week because I'm going to teach you a lesson called the God Pocket that I didn't create, but it's a great lesson for us to know. So stay tuned for part 2. But remember, Jesus, God, is in the creation business, the manufacturing side of the distribution channel. Me and you are the distributors. We're just the folks delivering the mail. In this case, the groceries. So think about that this week. It's Friday afternoon. Beautiful day in Savannah, Georgia. The pine trees are pollinating like crazy. Go out and have some fun this weekend. Go out and enjoy God's beauty this week. And remember a little bit, think about it, about your role in the distribution chain. Y'all have a great weekend. We'll be, good Lord willing, and the creek don't rise. We'll be back Monday for another episode of Coffee with Mr. Larry. God bless you. Bye-bye.